Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for the ANA eLearning Academy. Today we have Fred Schwan speaking about the MPC Military Boot Camp. So if you have any questions that come up during the presentation, please use the chat or the Q&A feature here in Zoom. The questions will come to me, and then I'll share them with Fred at the end of the presentation. At the end of the presentation, I will share a survey for you to fill out here in Zoom. It's just 8 questions, so feel free to fill it out for us. And then if you have any questions after the presentation, you can email them to me, seminars@money.org, or if Fred would like to take those as well, he can give his email out. If anything else comes up, please feel free to use that chat or the Q&A feature, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Fred. Enjoy.
Welcome to the wonderful world of military payment certificates. When we created the MPC Boot Camp about, 10, 12, 15 years ago, we decided to call it MPC Boot Camp for 2 reasons. First of all, of course, the perhaps a little humor in sticking with the military theme, but also to give the idea that it's going to be work. We are really going to cover the topic. This is not a frilly introduction. Oh, no, isn't that nice? We're going to try and teach you, if not everything there is to know about MPC, introduce at least everything there is to know and cover everything. And to make matters worse, when we have it at the summer seminar, we have 8 hours. Today we have 2. So we're going to keep right on task. For those of you who know me, you're snickering out there knowing that I'm unlikely to stay on task, but I'm going to try. But we're going to try and cover just about everything that I know anyway about military payment certificates. The biggest difference, I suppose, between now and the 8-hour at Colorado Springs class is that there'll be some things I'm just going to tell you, and we won't try to prove them or have drills to teach you, but I will tell you, and then you can accept it or believe it or not, and you can look it up. You can get one of the books and study it more in detail if you like, but we will have discussed it, at least introduced it. Uh-oh. All right, so the screen did not advance. Let's see here. Brianna, do I get extra time? Let's see here. It worked before. We'll try it this way. Let's see. No, that didn't do well. I can try it this way. I'd have to type in the page number. Well, that worked. We'll do that for a while and see if I can handle it. So at the end of World War II, we had occupation forces in Asia and Europe, primarily in Japan and Germany. And within a short period of time, the military experienced a $500 million overdraft. Overdraft means that the soldiers were sending back, soldiers and sailors and airmen were sending back, had sent back $500 million more than they had been paid. So this is non-appropriated money. What in the world are they going to do? It's primarily, bottom line, it's because of black market activity by the troops. It was exacerbated by some other things, some international diplomacy issues and all that we won't discuss today. But we had $500 million in overdraft, and they had to come up with a plan to fix it. So before we can look into the plan and how it's executed, we need to cover some preliminaries that will be repeated throughout the day or our 2 hours. So in producing military payment certificates, we're talking about paper money here. So what are the security features of the MPC? Well, it was printed by surface printing, that is lithography, which is not a very secure method actually. And I was going to say, if Joe Boland's watching, he saw me say surface printed was a security feature, he'd be throwing his hands up. But it was surface printed, as opposed to basically it was not intaglio. The most secure method of production is intaglio, and it was not intaglio, but there was compensating measures. The biggest one, it was different than other kinds of monies that you would issue, is that it was planned. Military payment certificates, when they were issued and when they were subsequently issued, were only planned to be issued for, say, 1 to 2 years. That they would be their use would be terminated on an unannounced and sudden restricted basis. So that is a very important security aspect, that you don't need to have as secure money if it's going to be used for a short period of time. And the end of a use of MPC would be marked by a C day, conversion day, when one series was converted to another. The main security in the paper on the military payment certificates is planchettes in the paper, small colored discs that are randomly distributed throughout the paper, and as a security measure, much like red and blue threads that you're probably familiar with on Federal Reserve notes even today. Oh, and when the MPC was first introduced, my pointer, I haven't been using the pointer. Okay, let's refine technique here. So hopefully you see the pointer. So there was a secret process introduced with the first series of military payment certificates. The secret process was use of an ultraviolet sensitive ink in the printing of MPC. That this was, as I said, called a secret process at the time. It had not been used on any other paper money in the world at that time. Now it's a common feature, but this was the first use of ultraviolet inks, and I will show you some later, quite a bit later in the presentation. So when we look at the production of military payment certificate, there's basically three different types of production. First, there's the regular issue, ready for circulation notes. Just a typical certificate that you'd expect to go into circulation. Then you have specimens. Specimen is a sample made by the manufacturer for various purposes. We've always said it was for training and education, so that the authorities, the finance authorities, could show the general the planned new issue and that sort of thing, and maybe even for showing finance clerks the new issues. But we've had reason to doubt that assumption recently, and so there's the exact use of specimens is not well known. Of very great importance to collectors is the creation of replacements. You may be familiar with replacements from our Federal Reserve notes and silver certificates and other notes in circulation. And a replacement is just what as it sounds. A replacement is a note that's used to replace a note which has been spoiled in the production process. If a note has been spoiled after it's been numbered, if that note were just thrown away, it would mess up the numbering sequence. So a separate sequence of notes called replacements are made, and they have an indication on them that shows that it's a replacement, and those are inserted to keep the numbering intact. We will look at quite a few replacements, and replacements are a large part of the collecting fun of MPC. And a few terminology issues that, so we use face and back for paper money, not obverse and reverse. Face and back. Front is also acceptable for the face. And we call it paper money, not currency. Currency is not a good term if you're trying to distinguish paper money from coin. Without getting into too much detail, currency is all the money in circulation, meaning coin and paper money. So if you have Fred's Coin and Currency Shop, that's like saying Fred's coin and paper money shop. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I meant to tell you in the very first minute that I'm assuming that everybody out there knows nothing. We have all kinds of folks involved today. Some absolute neophytes don't do paper money at all, and some MPC experts out there. So I'm sorry I can't take questions as we go along, but we're going to assume that everybody knows nothing. And this is not the best method of advancing the slides, but we're surviving.
Hey Fred, somebody said if you just click with your mouse, it should advance. I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay, I'll try that.
Okay.
When we advance this one, we'll try it. Thank you. So here we have a chart introducing the 14 series of MPC that were issued. You see them along the top, and the areas, countries, I guess in all cases, maybe not all cases. where the MPC was used. It gives you the idea of the breadth of the project. And certainly don't need to memorize those at this point or ever, but that gives you a big overview and an example of how it looks. So let's try our click here. No, that didn't seem to want to do it. I'll try one more time here to. Oh, wait a minute. There did it. Okay, now this with the arrows. I tried the arrows before and they didn't work, but now they're working. So thank you, Brianna. All right, there's sort of the overview. So our first look at a military payment certificate, or two military payment certificates. So let's have an anatomy of them, and we'll introduce lots of things here. So let's start out with right here. We have Series 461. So military payment certificates are identified by series. They don't have an actual date on them, but there's a date hidden in the series. So Series 461 means this is the first series created in 1946. The first series created in 1946. So you could have, so we have Series 461. You could have had Series 462. In fact, Series 462 was ordered but was never printed. I don't know if we'll bring that up again, but that's a real trivia point. You can really show off your knowledge if you talk to somebody about Series 462 military payment certificates. Because most people, if they ever knew about 462, they've forgotten about it. So the year and the sequence of the series for that year. And mostly this is, I can't think of the right word, fiscal year, the government fiscal year, but there are no rules on it, and I've not actually ever studied it to make absolute sure of the truthfulness of that statement in terms of were they all going fiscal year, or maybe one used the calendar year. I don't actually know. So one of the things now let's stick with numbers for now. So this little number right underneath is called the position number. So this 50-cent note was in position 1 on the sheet of 50-cent pieces. So now jumping ahead, this number could be from 1 to 84 on a fractional denomination. 1 to 84. There are 84 positions on a sheet of fractional MPC. So there's position 1. Then going down to our $10 here, so we see that this one is in position 33, which could have been as high as 50, and it's twice on the large notes. So it's just once on the small notes and twice on the large notes. And here we have the 461 again. Now we have our serial number, and it starts out with block AA for Series 461. It's going to advance through the series. The second series will be block BB and continue on for a while, and we'll get to the time that changes. Now here we have, it looks like maybe we're pointing at the serial number, but in fact we're pointing at this little dot right here. That's a planchette. I mentioned planchettes as a security device, so that's a planchette used as a security device. This is probably also a planchette, but when it came at the last second of putting the arrows in, I wasn't absolutely sure that wasn't a flaw or even a speck of dirt on there, so I didn't identify it as a planchette. Can you see where the arrows are pointing here? Can you see these little holes? Can you see those little holes? Well, those are the word specimen perforated in the note. So this is a specimen. I mentioned specimens on the previous slide, and there's ambiguity about its use, but their interest to collectors is just as strong as ever. And the interesting thing is, usually in the wide world of paper money, usually a specimen would have a serial number of all zeros. But in the case of MPC and other issues that were used during World War II, these notes that were printed by contractors, the contractors did not create their specimens by using zeros. They used leftover replacement notes and made them into specimens by perforating with specimen. So that tells us that this is a replacement note. So rather than the star that you might be familiar with on Federal Reserve notes and others, military payment certificates indicate a replacement by omitting the suffix letter. So you have a prefix letter and no suffix letter for replacement. So this would be a replacement, and this is a regular issue down here with both letters, prefix and suffix. Let's see, anything else of interest on there? I can't see anything. So here are some technicalities I was inferring there, where the fractional has 84 positions per sheet, and $1 has 70 per sheet, and high values have 50 per sheet. Don't snooze on me here, although this all will be on the final exam. So in all cases, they printed the notes in units of 8,000 sheets. So you had 8,000 sheets times 84 on a sheet. For fractionals, that's 672,000 pieces in or unit of military payment certificates. And in the biggest significance of this is that for most replacements, you only have 1 unit of printing of replacements. So for a fractional, you would expect the serial number to be less than 672,000. And if it's something higher than 672,000, well, there's something amiss, or at least something that you may want to study. So again, this will all be on the final exam. This information is in the MPC book, and I was going to say some other places, but maybe only the MPC book. Or maybe there's a few places on the internet that stole it out of the MPC book and hung it up there. I don't know. On the other hand, I don't know anybody who gets as much interest in this as I do. All right, so here we have a beautiful partial sheet of Series 471. Not important right now. But let's see, what can we learn from this partial sheet? All right. So no serial numbers there, no suffix on the serial numbers. So that means what? It means that these are replacements. And it's a partial sheet. Serial numbers less than 672,000. So it's 448,000. So these are replacements from the first unit of replacements printed. And then I can tell you, as an aside, in the case of 471s, there was only 1 unit of replacements printed. So these would be from the only unit. Now this is a little more complicated. So this is position 57. So the lowest position number shown in this partial sheet is 57. So before you could print series position 57, you had to complete 56 other positions. So you have 56 completed positions times 8,000 sheets equals 448,000 that would be necessary to be completed before you have position 57. So look at this. So that 448,000, right in here you have 448,000. So then you have a leftover of 940. So that means that this is sheet number 940 of the first unit of MPC replacements for Series 472. Okay? Got all that? I'm sure you do. It takes a while. Don't try and get it now. I'm just showing you. And so here you have, so 456,940. The top note here, position 57, is the bottom note, 58, is 456,940. You subtract from that the top note, 448,940, and you get 8,000. So you see that these two notes are 8,000 apart, excuse me. And you have the same thing over here. These will be 8,000 apart, proving the notion that I introduced before, that they're printed in units of 8,000. So in 1946, we had this overdraft of $500 million, and the brass in Washington decided they wanted to issue a special Army script, Joe Bowling and I called it an Army issue when we wrote the World War II Remembered in 1995. So they wanted to create this special military money that could be used only in on the concerns by the soldiers, sailors, and airmen. And so in pursuant to doing that, they decided to do an experiment. They had these leftover notes that of Allied military currency. Let's see this. Can you see the A in the background here? So this is a 50-cent note with A in the background. So it's commonly called A yen. They had these leftover A yen that hadn't been used, and they decided they would issue this A yen in Japan, rather than in Germany, for example, because of the more isolated nature of the economy. So they would issue the soldiers this A yen as their pay and restrict their conversion and try to get control of the black market, the black market. Get control of the overdraft is the real thing they were interested in, and it worked instantly. That the restrictions worked, everything about it worked, so they decided to go ahead and print a specific MPC. Now, what we have up here, I want to show you. Can you read that? This is the strap for 100 cent notes. That'd be 10 or 50 or 10 or 50 cent notes. So that's the strap that wraps it, and it has listen to the instructions. If the numbers on the notes in this package do not run in sequence, the substituted notes are replaced with the letter H. So for this Series 100 supplemental yen, replacements are with an H, as you have right here. So here you have the regular issue is AA, a replacement, very unusual, is HA. HA. So this is cherry picking information right here. The first bit of cherry picking is the A yen notes are much more scarce than the B yen notes, which were used as supplemental currencies in Japan. Where was I there? So the A yen, and then the A yen was used as the trial MPC. So the A versus the B is a cherry picking item, but the biggest one is the H for replacements. And the high value replacements in this Series 100 supplemental yen, very, 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 very rare. Very rare and desirable. Oh, it did work. All right, so here's our first series of MPC, actually called military payment certificates. Of particular interest here, look at the date ordered July 13, 46, and issued in all theaters in September 16th. So July, August, in 2 months, the notes were created, printed, numbered, separated, packaged, shipped, all in secret to the theaters and distributed in the theaters to be issued to the troops in a conversion from greenbacks, actually from local currencies, to military payment certificates on July 13th, 1946. So here you see your first series, Series 461, which we've already looked at, some 461. So you know about the number 46 and 1. And here we have the series, very, very plain of design. In the amount of time they had available, they did not spend much time on design. Here we have, so here's a replacement. And as you'd expect, we'll just check these as we go along here. You'll see that it is a serial number less than 672,000, just as you would expect. And I don't see a lot else of great interest. We have a replacement, a counterfeit down here at the bottom. So as Joe Bowling would say, if there's a way to make money, there'll be somebody will take advantage of it. So counterfeits came out fairly quickly. Again, these were surface printed notes, so it was relatively easy with photography to make counterfeits, and they did. So of course, counterfeits MPC are popularly collected. They're all the collectors like them quite a bit, and there's every series is not known, but quite a few series have counterfeits in collections. And here we have, I think this is the same note we used on our anatomy, and here we have a image of a specimen book. So the one of the ways these specimens were perhaps not used, but they were assembled for use was in these specimen books. So these specimen books had one specimen of each denomination of the respective series. Now note, in this case, it does not say what series it's from. And I'll show you an example later where it does show the series, a small difference. Now, we do know from correspondence at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing that there was an Army finance official who thought it was important to, or appropriate at least, to send specimens of MPC, specimen sets of MPC to all the central banks of the world, which was commonly done at that time for new paper money issues. Maybe it's still done. Probably is. I'm not sure. So this person took it upon himself, and they sent out like 100 sets to the central banks of the world. There was nothing to indicate that they continue to send further series that way. We just don't know, actually. I'd love to ask for questions for each series as we went along, but we don't have that opportunity today. So for series 471 was the second series. I don't know why that doesn't seem as large. But anyway, series 471. Now this one was ordered as series 462 because it was the first idea. It was ordered shortly after series 461, so they ordered it as 462, or at least they did preliminary work as 462, and then later in the production decided, well, gee, it's not going to be issued until into the fiscal year 47, so they changed it to series 471. So as I told you, real trivia is to talk about series 462 MPC. Almost no one will know what you're talking about. You have to be a real fan to know what you're talking about. And now an interesting little twist here. Notice that, as I told you, the serial letters were sequenced from Alpha to Bravo for series 471. Now you can look at some of these, like this one right here. If you just look at this quickly, it looks like this is a 408 instead of a 40B. And the other way works as well. If you have a replacement without a letter and it ends in an 8, it often looks like it's ending in a B, and people have missed replacements because of that cute little thing. Traditionally, the series 471-5 here was considered the rarest of all MPC for people building a collection. That was especially true for high condition, for uncirculated notes. That's changed quite a bit with the sale of the Paymaster collection in 2016. Can't believe it's 4 years already. But the Paymaster collection set MPC collecting on its ear. The market is still adjusting to that. Whereas there were, prior to the Paymaster collection, there were no 471. I shouldn't say that. There were very few, if any, uncirculated 471 $5 certificates in collections. There were some that had been sold by people as uncirculated, but I didn't think they were actually uncirculated. So but the Paymaster collection, I don't know how many were in there. There were at least 4 in the Paymaster collection. So really set things on its ear. Now here you have a rather nice looking, where's my pointer? Okay. You have a nice looking 10 down here. If you look more carefully, you see, oh, the numbers don't look just right. They're a little uneven, which is a common characteristic of counterfeits. So this is a counterfeit 10. And of particular interest, could you see the position number in there? That's position 81. Position 81. Now, what was the position range for high value MPC? From 1 to, everybody shout it out, 1 to 50. So this should be, on a legitimate note, that should be less than 51. So it is a counterfeit by other characteristics as well, but this has this wonderful mistake by the counterfeiter of having the wrong, an inappropriate position number. So it does work all right. And so here we have just 472. Perfect from the educational point of view. We get to see we had 471 a moment ago. Now we have series 472. They sequenced in printing the next issue and numbered it 472 because it was the second one in fiscal year 1947. One of the interesting things, well, first of all, they improved the design by the inclusion of the eagle from the Great Seal of the United States. And so it's a little more, and have it on the back as well. And so it's a more attractive design, but still not very exotic. And for the only time, they have the position numbers greatly enlarged on the high values. So you have these big position numbers, although you see they had it only once. Instead of two smaller ones, you have one large position number. So that's very unusual. It's different. Here you have one of the specimen booklets showing the series. Not that makes a lot of difference. What's important is what the contents. But up here you have a raised note. We have I'm not sure if this is a 5 or 10 cent. I believe this is a 10 cent raised to 50 cents. And so they did a fairly good job, detailed job of creating the 50 cents here, but it is 10 cent because they didn't correct it over in the small counters here on the left end. So series 472, fairly scarce, especially in high denomination, high values, but the Paymaster collection set that on its ear as well. Series 481, very, very important series in our study of MPC. I mentioned in the preliminary slide that there were as many as 4 printings of MPC. Well, series 481 indeed had 4 printings, 4 discrete printings. So a collection that had a nickel, a 5 cent through $10, that's 7 denominations. When we solved all this, a set went from approximately 7 notes to 28 notes that you would need to have them all. 2 of them, the 5 and the 10, were not printed in the 4th printing, so 26 notes. Now, of great interest and importance, I should say, is that for every regular issue printing, there will be a corresponding replacement printing. So just take a nickel. So a nickel had 4 printings. So now again, a collection went from 1 note to 4 note if you want 4 notes, if you want to have all of the nickels. And in fact, it went from 2, that is a regular issue 5 cent and a replacement 5 cent, to 8, 4 regular issues and 4 replacements. So it added great fun and opportunity, if not difficulty, and challenge to collecting MPC. So let's look. It all started. Unraveling the printings started with the $1 and the position numbers. See, here you have a position number on the right side of the note, and here you have a position number on the left side of the note. These were, the left and right were known for many years. I believe those were first observed by Neil Schaefer, who informed Ed Hoffman, and Ed Hoffman sent out a letter to everybody that he knew, every collector he knew, said, gee, do you have these, and what are your numbers? And try to figure out where the break was between left and right position numbers on the dollars. And so that was known for a long time, at least from the early 70s. And later on, after studying that for a while and getting accustomed to it, we decided, well, gee, let's study it harder. And son of a gun, we found that you had position numbers, as this 54, where the 4 has a serif, and this 44, where the 4s do not have a serif. So we observed that you had all of the denominations came with position numbers with and without serifs. So we concluded that that meant that there were 2 printings of all denominations of Series 481. So actually, the introduction of that interpretation in the second edition of the MPC catalog was met with a yawn. Hardly anybody paid any attention until Larry Smolczynski finally realized that it was there, and he said, "Wow, is that interesting?" He beat himself up a little bit for having missed it, but he made up for that by jumping on the bandwagon, and he studied the Dickens out of Series 481 notes in circulation. So he studied and studied and studied, and he finally found that for the $1, it went from right to left and back to right, and possibly it was the other way around. But he found that there clearly was something going on, and almost certainly it meant that there were 3 printings of Series 481. So we knew that we believed that there were 2 because of the serifs on the position numbers, and he studied those, and when he found that rotating position number on the $1, we really got excited, and he and I went to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in Washington, on a arranged research meeting and all that, and we went there planning to solve the mystery of the 3 printings of 481s. Boy, were we in for a surprise. And we'd been there before, so I had this available before. I'd seen the information before, but hadn't appreciated what I was seeing. So we went there and we had a collection plan, how we were going to gather the information. And so it started out that I would do all the other series while Larry worked on the $1. I'm sorry, where he worked on Series 481. And it was exciting, and we got there, and he says, "Yep, yeah. Here's all the stuff. Yep, there's 3 printings. Yep. No, there's 4 printings. Oh, he got all excited, rightly so, and he laid it out for me and looked at it, and in fact, there were the data there for 4 printings of Series 481, and then there were 3 printings for Series 521, and there were 2 printings for Series 472, and it goes on and on. You can get them in detail out of the book. I'll mention a few more. But again, it revolutionized the collecting of MPC, that you could have as many as 4 of these nickels, which we already mentioned. So pretty exciting. And so all of that was detailed in the 4th edition of the MPC book, where you can most easily identify by serial number ranges. But in the case of 481, you have the fun of not only have serial number ranges, you can use the position, the fonts of the position numbers. And actually, I should have told you earlier, when Larry first identified that there were 3, actually, I'm not sure when it happened. I'm not sure if it was before or after we found the 4th. Anyway, I got studying, and I found that you can differentiate between 2 of the series by the ultraviolet characteristics of the notes. So between I think the 2nd and the 3rd, that you can differentiate them by the ultraviolet characteristics. So that's to me a pretty exciting thing as well. And there are other discoveries like that remain to be made, I'm sure. So I wanted to point out this one particular replacement to you. So here we have a $5 replacement, and look at the serial number. So it's 744,000. All right, can you figure out what printing is that? So for the first printing would be less than 400,000, and the second printing would be less than 800,000. So this is a second printing replacement, and as such is well, actually, I was going to say as such is very important. It's the only replacement. It's only $5 replacement of any denomination. So of any printing, excuse me. It's the only $5 replacement of any printing. So I was going to say it was the only second printing $5 replacement, but it's the only $5 replacement. but it is from the second printing. And the 3 printings of 10s, there are replacements of all 3, I believe. I could be checked on that, but I believe there are, which makes for a great collecting opportunity and just spectacular. And now the design is much improved. I'm sorry, I should have talked about that at first. So you have the mechanic vignette from the back of the, I believe, the $100 plain back national banknote, I think. Could be corrected on that. You have the eagle again. You have these have a name, I don't remember, from the doorway of the Supreme Court, I believe. So we're getting much more attractive designs. So here we have the result of a sea day. You have 2 Air Force officers with a pile of Series 481 that probably collected from their unit or whatever. The caption doesn't say exactly, but there they are working on some 481s that have just been converted. Series 521. All right. Much more attractive designs. They're really starting to go crazy. And not only the designs, look at the different colors for every denomination. So remember the matter of raising notes. Well, raising the fractionals to a 50-cent note is now much more difficult. And similarly, the designs are different for the 5 and the 10, but most significantly, the size of the $5 was reduced. So it's now smaller than the $10. And so that's a security device. And quite interesting. So let's look at, first we'll look at the $10 here. Let's do it again. So what printing is this $10 from? So it's 354,000. I can't quite make that out. 354,000. In any event, it's less than 400,000. So that's a first printing replacement. But this is the zinger right here. This is an amazing, amazing note. Second printing regular issue 521 5s are very, very, very tough. Maybe a dozen reported in collections. There weren't very many second printings, and they're scarce. Second printing regular issue are scarce. So the notion that there'd be a replacement extant that would survive, we didn't think that there would be any. But son of a gun, there was one in the Paymaster collection. Here it is. Well, I back up from a second printing we're talking. So here you have 624,000. So it's more than 400,000, less than 800,000. So here we have a second printing replacement. Spectacular note, uncirculated. I just assume it was in VG to hold down the price, because to me the importance is the number, not the condition. But actually the Paymaster collection had very few circulated notes in it, and how this one got to be there, it seems a little strange, just as a singleton. But the interpretation is that these were never issued, so these are essentially remainders, but it's a perfect note and made for circulation, but didn't make it there, and it was in the Paymaster collection and sold. I don't like to go there a lot, but people always are interested in what is stuff worth. That was the highest price ever paid for a military payment certificate in auction, and also was higher than any that I know of in private transactions, at about, I think it was $18,000. Whether that was with or without juice, I'm not even sure of that. I think that was without juice. So that'd be with over 20,000 with juice. But I guess for the very top note of a whole type of collecting, that isn't all that expensive. Not everybody's going to necessarily want to have, everybody would want to have, but not everybody would be pursuing that note anyway. If you've got all the other replacements, then maybe you pursue that one. Actually, I don't know who bought it. It's out there someplace. Just don't know. You can put in the back of your mind, your memory, this vignette right here, I'll show it to you again in a little while, where it was reused on a note. I love this vignette right here. This wild-looking portrait of this woman, like she's in Hurricane Sally down there in Mobile, Alabama. The wind just blowing her hair like crazy. So series 521. Here's some real interesting pictures. I believe this is the result of a poker game. Here's $830 in military payment certificate series 521 that probably this fellow wrote on the back of the pictures that he sent home. It says, here's what $830 looks like in MPC. That was written on the back of the photograph. In the margin it says January 55. And so a collector friend found those photos for me. Well, he found those photos in a photo album that he bought on eBay or wherever. And he bought the album because it had a bunch of old cars in it, pictures of old cars. And he brought it to me at a show and offered it to me for what would be an outrageous amount of money to pay for 4 snapshots, or 5 snapshots, I guess. There were additional 3 pictures. And I said, what? You've got to be crazy. And he said, oh, the old car photographs are really popular. You can sell those. And I said, I don't want the old car photos. I don't want to sell them or whatever. And he wouldn't budge. So I finally gave him what he wanted for the whole album. We stood right there, and I took out the 5 MPC pictures and gave him back the album. I said, here, you got your money now. You go sell the car pictures. But I just love these photos. So we need a photo interpreter to figure out where this is. I think it's in Germany. So here's the radiator and a radio there, and an electric outlet coming down from just on the outside of the wall there. Ashtray, smoking in bed, proof of smoking in bed, or indication of smoking in bed, maybe a beer can, I don't know, and a foot locker. Pretty spectacular. You might guess that in addition to military payment certificates, I collect pictures of military payment certificates, especially pictures of military payment certificates in use. And you can be sure I studied these as closely as I could with a magnifying glass. You know, I've got the glossy, trying to find the serial numbers to see if there were any replacements. And out of 830, so that's at least 83, let's just say it's about 83 tens. There ought to be very good chance that there's a replacement in there. 1 out of 100. All right, series 541. Very well known because of this one right here. This is one of the keynotes. Again, in terms of values affected by the Paymaster collection, which included some, but spectacular. Just a really nice design. I like it a lot. And all of the designs I like. I like these pastel colors. And this is an incomplete note. There's been some discussion recently about terminology to use for notes like this, like remainder, like proof, various discussions on that. Now, look at this note right here. You're going to love this. So this is a replacement. So we got series 541, block FF, and series $10 replacement, prefix F, no suffix, replacement, right? You know that well. Look at the serial number, 21 million. 21 million. The regular issue production of this note is something like 22 million. I should have looked that up. But it's like 22 million. Just how can that be? How can you have a replacement serial number being that high? The serial number should be down like under 400,000 or maybe under 800,000 or even under 1.2 million if you had 3 units of replacements. So just doesn't make sense. 21 million. How can it be? I don't have pictures here, but also on the 50 centers. Now the 50 centers had serial numbers in the, let's see, about 8 million 50-cent pieces reported printing. About 8 million. Stick with me here. There are replacements for the 50-cent note in the range of 16 million. So replacement serial numbers that exceed by double the regular issue serial numbers. Can't be. It just destroys the whole concept. How can it be? Well, we have an answer. I'm trying to decide to tell you now, or I'll tell you with the next slide. Or not. I can't decide. Which is better? All right. When they went, a combination. So when they went to print Series 591, that's the next series, they sent out from the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, they sent bids out to request for bids to the various security printers, to include Tudor Press up here, which printed Series 541. So they sent the bids out. The bids came in, and the Bureau selected the Forbes company to print Series 591. And Mr. Tudor Press went crazy. That Tudor Press had submitted the low bid, but it hadn't gotten it. They'd awarded it elsewhere. So Tudor Press is in Massachusetts, and this is so Series 591. We're talking about in the late 50s. So that the Tudor Press wrote to Senator Kennedy and complained, wrote to President Eisenhower and complained, went crazy that they were the low bid and they were not awarded the contract. In the response to Tudor Press from the BEP, copies of that correspondence is in the files of the BEP with the issuing of the contract for Series 591, and it explained in the explanation that the performance of Tudor Press in the printing of Series 541 had been unacceptable. Far too many errors, and in particular, a specific thing that was specified was they lost control of the numbering. So basically what happened, you can just imagine, you printed the number of replacements you needed for the, anticipated for the, let's say the 50 cent. You print the number that you anticipate, and you go through with them quickly. So you print up another unit, and then another unit, and another unit, and then you forgot what unit it was. So you say, well, we'll just go to the 20th unit or the 10th unit to make sure we don't duplicate a number, because the last thing you want to do is duplicate a serial number, because for sure somebody will find it out there and really go crazy, and it will undermine the confidence of everybody in the notes. So we're surmising, but what happened is they just made not random, but deliberate, but nonsensical. Anyway, they just made more or less random assignments of the numbers. So that's what happened with the Series 541. So they're wild and crazy numbers you can find for a Series 541. And as I told you, so that was all, we found that out relating to the printing of Series 591, which then was awarded to and printed by Forbes Lithograph Corporation. And we have a separated pair here, again from the Paymaster collection, and some specimens over here. So a nice series, relatively unremarkable, overall fairly scarce. Even finding the fractionals in uncirculated condition is difficult. The 50 cent is the most difficult 50 cent overall. The 50 cent replacement is only known in maybe 4 pieces, a rare replacement. So, but not a lot to talk about. Series 611. So after everything that the Bureau had gone through with Series 541 and the issuing of 591, the contract. So for Series 611, the Bureau decided they're going to print the MPC, and for the balance of the series, the Bureau printed the notes. All of the remaining MPC was printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Series 611 is a popular series. The 5 and the 10 are particularly interest. There's some people, or interest, yes. Some people love to say that this is Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield. And so I guess they're saying this one's Marilyn Monroe and that one's Jane Mansfield, I guess. I don't even know. It's not true. They're all fictitious, notional, I guess I should say. I mean, here you have the Statue of Liberty from the side, but they're not real people. And there's, of course, as with everything, there's always an exception, and we'll get there in a little bit. And I've shown you before in a few cases it was just included some vignettes that were used in the preparation of the MPC. That you can sometimes find these vignettes in the marketplace, that they were created at the Bureau and maybe other places for use in preparing various kinds of artwork. All right, Series 641. Series 641 is the first series used in Vietnam, where it was used exclusively. So, whoa, hang on. Whoa, got a Charlie horse there. So series, sorry about that, the Charlie horse. So Series 641, it's an attractive series, but nothing real spectacular. There are 3 printings, and the 3rd printing of replacements is very rare. So there's real cherry picking opportunity. It's best if you have the book, but you can also make yourself a cheat sheet to figure that out. Here you have a $10 replacement, and that's from what printing now? So that's 1,190. So that's the first printing, less than 400,000. So it's the first printing. The lady here, the woman here, is from the face of the $2 educational note. That you can look that up and find it, but you'll see that she's on there, that profile. And the Statue of Liberty, again, a common device. Now, some Series 641, we advanced through letter J. Remember, we talked about that early on. We started out with blocks AA in Series 461, and we got up through block J in 641. Now, look, as we go, we're going on to Series 651. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Let's just look at some more eye candy here. Some stage proofs of the dime. And we'll look at some more of this kind of thing later on. Oh, actually, there's 4 of them there on my screen. The bottom right one is just about fades out. Hopefully you can see it. So there's 4 stage printings of the 641 dime. So now, we're going to go from Series 641 to Series 651. Remember, in Series 461, 471, we copied completely the design and just changed it from blue to red. So in Series 651, we're going to do something similar. So we changed the color, as you can see, but we did some other things as well. Whereas, so for Series 641 here, we have block JJ, and for Series 651, we reset to block AA. And we added the Minuteman to the design. Why they copied the design? Presumably, the copy of the design and just fixing it by adding the Minuteman is just an economy measure at the Bureau. We don't know that, but that's the presumed and apparent reason. In selecting the Minuteman, they tried several other things. There are proofs at the Bureau and illustrated in the MPC book of adding some stars and some shields. There were other possibilities explored, but they went with the adding of the Minuteman. Now, as we're about to look at it, Series 651, You know, tell you a little bit about the fractionals. When I started collecting MPC in 1973, it was just known, it was just accepted as gospel that none of the Series 651 fractional denominations had been issued. That instead of issuing the fractionals, they had been held back and coins had been introduced. That the soldiers didn't like the fractionals and they never did. And so for that or other reasons, they decided to hold back the fractionals. We just knew that to be true. But as time went on, eventually a single piece was found, then a few pieces, and now, whereas I have good knowledge of a single piece of a 50-cent selling for about $5,000 in the late 70s. Now you can get a set of all four of the fractionals for, I don't know, let's say $400. I don't keep up a lot on the values, but for a modest amount, you can get a set of the fractionals. And here they are. So here are the four fractionals. There's two of them, three of them, and the fourth one. So those four fractionals, those were the fantasy notes of the 1970s, boy. To just imagine getting to see one of those was just a fantasy. And now you can have one for a modest amount. Although, I'll tell you, one of the last frontiers is replacement of these fractionals. No replacement is known for any of these fractionals. And Marv Miracle tracked those, and I can't remember. I guess the consensus is that there's, say, 200 of each out there. And if there's 200 of each, that's, and there's four denominations, that's 800 notes. Out of 800 notes, there's the distinct possibility of having one replacement, except that we know for Series 651, the printing standards of the Bureau were very, very high, because let's consider the other replacement numbers. Of the $1, there are two, maybe three replacements known in all collections. And this is amazing, really amazing, because look, this was not withdrawn until 1973. Series 651 was in use up through 1973. I was collecting MPC while it was still in use. There was a collector, Don C. Terrell, was a Department of the Army civilian working in Korea, who actively sought replacements. He sought replacements, put up flyers, and did all kinds of things. And in a couple years of serious looking, he came up with $1 replacement, which has changed hands a few times. And then there's been, that I know of, one random find found since then. And I heard a rumor of a third one. But so there's two or three, in spite of the fact that they were seriously sought after. It's that's an amazing fact in its own. And then the $10, look at the serial number on this one. This is a beauty, serial number 18. The $10, I believe, has only 7 reported. And the interesting twist about that one is 6 of the first 7 were reported within a few months of the survey of replacement serial numbers, which started in the middle 70s. 6 of the 7 were reported then. Only 1 has been found in all that time since then. So what that tells me is there were other collectors back then who they were current and they found them. And so that was not those were not random finds. So, and now all that's building up to tell you then that the $5 is the last replacement to be found. There are no issued 651 $5 replacements known in collections. And again, you have all of these factors involved, to include the printing of the 651.5 is the lowest printing of any military payment certificate at 1.2 million. So whether that one will ever be found, who knows? That will be an electrifying find when it is found. I presume that it will eventually be found, but it'll be electrifying. I don't think all 4 of the fractional replacements will be found, but I think there's a very good chance that 1 will be found. It whether it be a random find just out of stuff at shows and whatnot, or something like the Paymaster collection again, out of leftover things, who knows? Series 661. Again, I should back up. Series 651. Series 641 was used in Vietnam only. Series 651 was used primarily in Korea, but also in Japan and Libya. It was very important special use in Libya, or limited use in Libya. But now we go back to the rest of the issued series are Vietnam only. So we have Series 661, which introduced the $20 denomination. And so the $20 denomination is introduced, and this is just showing you. So here's the vignette that was used. This is from potato stamps, 1 pound of potatoes. So apparently there was a tax on potatoes, and they produced the 1 potato stamps to pay the potato tax, I guess. I'm not sure. Does that say tax? What does that say? It doesn't say down there. So that's just a cute vignette use. You can do a lot of study on the vignette use, and that's just one of a few that I'm showing you. All right, Series 661. Very attractive series. Told you to remember on the 5/21/10. I told you to remember this vignette earlier. So here it is. And then here on Series 661, they took that same vignette and moved it to the back of the $10 Series 661. We'll see it better later. This is sometimes called the Janet Jackson note, because the young lady here in the image seems to have had a wardrobe malfunction, and an attractive issue. Series 681, and again, a whole new approach. Here we have real life images, actually, I was going to say not photographs, but in a couple of cases, they're even photographs. Or start with photographs. So with Series 681, we have the introduction of real life images. And we'll talk a little more about those. So real people on the Series 681. So here we have Ed White. At the time that he made the very first spacewalk, he was, of course, very, very famous for that. And so that's Ed White and his famous first spacewalk. This is a great story here. So this is the nuclear submarine Edison, USS Edison. And so we have this, I believe this is called the sail. And so here we have the crew coming in. Now they found John Simonuk, a great collector, found the photograph that was made from coming into port in Scotland. Okay, there's a submarine base in Scotland. And so this picture is coming in at an early summer seminar. Collector David Klinger was a student. And when I announced to the class that this was the Edison, he said, "No, it wasn't the Edison," because he himself had been the captain of the sister nuclear submarine to this one, to the Edison, and the Edison did not have this fancy thing here. And I told him, I said, "Well, Dave, I don't know what to tell you except that's what all the documents say." And he went off at lunch, and this is shortly after the start of the internet. And he came back from lunch and he looked it up on the internet. Nowadays, of course, everybody look it up on their phone in the class. Maybe some of you are doing that right now. And but he came back from lunch with his head down and said, "Yeah, that he had found it too, and that's the Edison." And then he told us something that I didn't know, but shouldn't surprise us. He said it wouldn't be unusual to have special missions. So you'd have some kind of special equipment bolted and welded and anyways attached to the submarine and went out and did some special mission. It could have been a new kind of sonar or radar or something they were experimenting with. Who knows what kind of special mission it was. But anyway, so that got Dave all interested in the image. And so he got working on it. Since he had the image that John Siminook had found, and he had more information, he worked and worked and worked, and he found, and he identified these people. In fact, he identified the crew members on the day that this picture was taken, since they had the date that it was taken. He found the crew members, and he has got the identification of this guy right here, whose name escapes me. I'm sorry, I can't remember right now, but found by David Klinger. And this fellow, maybe somebody out there knows it or will tell it as a question, give it to us as a question later on, or it could be a comment rather than a question. But so there, that person's been identified. So that's wild and crazy and wonderful. And now my favorite, Dave Klinger again. Dave Klinger was just bound and determined to identify this sailor. Now, Dave Klinger being a sailor himself, actually, I don't know if he's a sailor. He's a naval officer. And he explained to me whether that makes him a sailor or not. I can't remember. So anyway, and he's a retired naval officer. So he wanted to identify this person, and he has. We've not found any document to prove it, but I believe I agree with Dave. I've seen the picture of the person. I'm about to tell you who this is. The person whose image this is Monroe. I can't remember his first name right this second. Douglas Monroe. Douglas Monroe was a signalman based upon his patch here, according to David, and I think Roger Ursi has told me that too. And I like it because the vignette here and over here has the signal lamp if he's a signalman. But that part's insignificant. The significant thing about Douglas Monroe was Douglas Monroe received the Medal of Honor for actions at Guadalcanal. And I won't tell you about the actions. You can read it if you like. But the amazing thing about Douglas Monroe, the really amazing thing about Douglas Monroe and his Medal of Honor and his selection here, if you go to a chart of Medals of Honor all time or Medals of Honor in World War II, and you look at that chart, there's one number that just jumps out at you. And all that time, there was one Coast Guardsman received the Medal of Honor, and that was Douglas Monroe. And here he is. And Douglas Monroe was lived in Clay Elm, Washington, and I had been by Clay Elm on I-90 many times, and just unknowingly. But once I found out that he was from there, and then I read a book about him, and I've stopped there. I visited his gravesite, which is actually rather ostentatiously presented. They have a ceremony every year there on Douglas Monroe's, I believe it was on his birthday, but it could be on the birthday of the Coast Guard. So there's Douglas Monroe. Now there's other possibilities on Series 681 of real people. So here we have the Thunderbirds, Air Force Thunderbirds. I one time made a mistake in the first or second edition of the MPC book and called them Blue Angels. Oh my goodness. Boy, did I catch grief, still catch grief about having made that mistake. So those are the Thunderbirds, the Air Force Thunderbirds. And I don't remember what the airplane is. But when that picture is found, and if the date of the picture, that picture is known, it wouldn't be impossible to find out the names of a pilot or crew. I don't know if there's more than one person in these planes or not. Probably there aren't. So anyway, it'd be possible to find their names. But for sure, it'd be possible to eventually find out who this was or is. And on the back, on the back of the note here, we have the, I believe that's an M48 tank. And here, look at the tank commander here. So it's possible to find that picture and eventually find out who that is. Not necessarily saying it's easy or likely to happen, but it's possible. This one for sure, at the Bureau, they have the model pictures that were taken to make this image by whether, I believe it was a real Special Forces sergeant that they took the picture, but I don't know that for sure. It could have just been any kind of model or actor. There's a long story about his stripes there, whether he's a master sergeant or a sergeant first class, and the Bureau took it upon themselves to, in issuing a souvenir card that included this note, to slam Fred Schwan for getting the identification wrong, and they were the ones that had it wrong. I think it's funny. B-52, the picture's been found. I don't know that we know the date or any other conditions of that picture, but that picture is the publicity picture of Boeing for the B-52, and it's not impossible to find out who the crew was on that day, even though you can't really see any of them. But this person for sure could be identified. That here's the vignette as it appears at the Bureau. I've not seen the photographic evidence like this one. This one had the photographs of the sergeant posing. This I've only seen the second generation artwork, but certainly it's possible if somebody could get their everlasting fame in MPC lore by identifying those. Here we have the inside of the finance office, Binh Thuy, Vietnam. Gene Ryan gave us these pictures, and it's not real bright. I'm sorry, I don't know how well you can see it, but that's Gene Ryan himself. And so this is the Binh Thuy, Vietnam finance office. Here's the outside, but what I wanted you to see was inside. So kind of surprising when you can see it up close. That's Federal Reserve notes right there. I think 20s, I don't remember for sure, but indication that a lot of greenbacks in this safe. And whether, I think there were more transactions in greenbacks by finance in Vietnam and other places than we realized. I think that's an emerging area of research that, and I may be all wet too. Maybe we won't, never know. So then over to the left of these safes in this work desk here are these boxes. Look at these boxes. These are MPC boxes. These are the wooden crates that the MPC came in from the manufacturer. So they came in boxes, wooden boxes like this, and then they're broken into cardboard boxes like this, which have this label on the end for 4,000 notes. 4,000 notes in one of these boxes, and then I believe 32,000 notes altogether in the wooden boxes. The wooden boxes are only identified by code and manifest number, so you don't know what's in it. So if some thief had a chance to steal a box off of a ship or something, he'd have to take his chances. If he could only steal one, he would want to get 20s, but he'd have an equal chance of getting any denomination. So this is wild to see a pile of these boxes. And this picture right here with the box, this is Marv Miracle, who was one of the guys who was involved in distributing to collectors the unissued series of MPC, because we've discussed the 13 series of MPC that were issued, plus the series of supplemental yen that was used as MPC, making 14. And then in addition to all that, there's 2 unissued series. Except I'm sorry, got way ahead of myself. I forgot about Series 692. I'm very sorry. All right, so Series 692 was the last of the regular issued notes. The next ones will be the unissued notes. So, wow, how could I have forgotten Series 692? Everybody's favorite MPC. Beautiful, beautiful images. The Indians and the elk family, and the beautiful, beautiful eagle. So, what a spectacular series. And this is Chief Ouray, and Chief Ouray on a postcard. Chief Ouray was a famous Indian chief in Colorado. There's a town, Ouray, Colorado, in southwest Colorado. So spectacular. And the bonus that we have for Series 692 is we know who designed the dollar values anyway. This is Len Buckley. Len Buckley was when he retired, was the chief of the design department at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. So it meant he was responsible for designing all paper money issues that came out and stamp issues that came out of the BEP at the time. Now, when Series 692 was being planned, Len Buckley was a new employee in the art department. I made a mistake one time in print of calling him I said he was an apprentice artist at the Bureau. He was not an apprentice artist. He was a journeyman artist, but he was a new employee at the Bureau when 692 was being planned, and he was given the task of designing the high denomination 692s. And so he did. And like he's described, he went over to the Smithsonian, the Museum of Natural History, and he went with his little stool, and he went and sat outside the diorama of the elk family at the Museum of Natural History, and he sketched and then painted this family of elk, which then, to much to my surprise, as Len described to us, was then rendered into intaglio, and proofs were printed in intaglio of all the designs that he created, so that when they created the offset, the lithograph issues, their photo-ready copy would be from intaglio proofs, which he, as Len described, that's to get the best fidelity of line. His eyes sparkles when he describes that. But you can kind of see the sparkle in his eye here. This is Len at MPC Fest. Len came to an MPC Fest and addressed all of us. And so he's getting, I had just presented this copy of the MPC book to Len and had autographed it. And here we have an important, I'll just say specimen book for now. I'll show you another picture of this cover in a few minutes. He had just signed this, or one, not this one, I'm not sure, one like it. He had just signed that as the designer. So kind of an unusual souvenir. So that should complete the issued MPC. No, one more, I'm sorry. So, uh-oh. I thought Brianna was coming on and telling me I was out of time. So here's where the vignette came from for the eagle in the back of the fractionals. And I particularly like this match. And what I like the most about it is this match was found by a very young collector, a high school collector, whose name escapes me at the moment. Joe Bowen probably remembers the name. Anyway, he described how he found it in his high school economics book. He was sitting there, and there was a picture of this bond, and he recognized it right away from the MPC, and found the images, and then informed us about that match at an ANA convention. So I wanted to give him special credit, even though I can't remember his name. I'm sorry about that. But the opportunity is everywhere. Aha, so finally, we get to the unissued Series 691. So you'll notice 691, and we just discussed Series 692. Well, Series 691 was planned and printed before Series 692. It was planned to replace Series 651 in Vietnam. So Series 691 was printed to replace 651 in Vietnam. Series 692 was printed to replace Series 681. Back up, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. Series 691 was printed to replace Series 651 in Korea. Series 691 was printed to replace 651 in Korea. And Series 692 was printed to replace Series 681 in Vietnam. And 692, in fact, fulfilled that function. But Series 691, which was delivered to Korea, ready to replace Series 651, was never used. They decided it was too expensive and bothersome to go with it anymore, and they withdrew Series 651, replaced it with greenbacks, and that was the end of MPC, but that left Series 691 in storage. Now you'll see here, you'll notice there's no fractionals, and that's the cause of some confusion sometimes, but there's no potential of Series 691 fractionals because they were not even designed. They were not in the original order, so they were not even designed at the Bureau, and if they weren't designed, they couldn't be printed. So the 691s consisted of 1 through 20. So you can see now the 1, 5, 10, and 10, 1, 5, and 10 are dead copies of the 541 MPC with the change of color and change of series, of course. So since they copied a series that did not have a 20, they had to make up a 20, and they made a completely different new 20 to go with it. Now these were, I told you how the 651 fractionals were the fantasies in the 70s. In the 80s and 90s, the fantasies that people just knew they'd never get to see were the 691 and 701. These were fantasy notes known to be at the Bureau. Hints of the designs had leaked out, but we just knew no one would ever get to have a 691 and a 701. Well, eventually they did a test and what do they call it? A shelf life test on the 691s and 701s in storage, and they decided those were unsuitable for use. So they ordered a new printing of 691 and 701. Amazingly, they didn't restart the serial numbers. They started it from where the first printings had ended. It's amazing because if they were found unsuitable, you'd presume they're going to destroy the first printings, but they didn't. So that left 2 printings of each in storage, and then in the 1990s, maybe it was even the early 2000s. I guess it was the early 2000s. I don't remember. The Army decided to destroy them all, that they would never use MPC again. And during the course of that, a fellow called Mr. 681, the finest tradition of collectors everywhere, he liberated some 691s and 701s from storage and in the process of being destroyed. And that's how we have modest numbers of Series 691 and 701s in collections today. So it's an amazing, amazing thing. And a few replacements known of each, but not very many. So I guess now one of the last horizons is the replacements of 691s and 701s, which will. So as promised, Ultraviolet. Did I show you some Ultraviolet? Now these pictures were taken by Joe Bowling. So let's start over here. All right. So here we have the design that was introduced in Series 541 and then copied for 691. And here we have it under visible light, and here we have it under ultraviolet light. You can see the spectacular difference and how spectacular it looks under ultraviolet. I'm sure you like that. Then for the $1 691 copy of the 541, here we have it under visible light, and here we have the 2 printings under ultraviolet. This is spectacular. So here you have the first printing has a similar reaction to the $5 here, and then look at the $1. So the $1 has an entirely different reaction as this reaction around the serial number. So you can actually differentiate between the printings on the 691s by ultraviolet if you don't have the serial numbers to tell you exactly. So here's 701. Spectacular. Another new approach. This time it's real people, but known real people. With Thomas Edison and George Washington and Washington Irving and Robert Fulton and a specimen book here, and the backs with a spectacular, mostly Western landscapes, but also a Midwestern landscape. Actually, this vignette is taken from a tint of an Allied military lira note. So these are quite spectacular. what more can I say? I deliberately, however, did not show you the fractionals. Unlike the 691s, which did not call for fractionals at all, the 701s called for fractionals. So fractionals were designed, fractionals were printed. So when in numismatics, when they say all of something is destroyed, I never believe that. But in the case of the BEP, these 701 fractionals issued pieces, replacements, and never left the bureau. They were still in the boxes. So I'm just talking about how probably all other regular issues and replacements were destroyed, but we knew that there would be some specimens out there. That somehow, since the specimens would have been created, the specimen sets would have been created at the time of the whole sets being created and sent to the field, that probably there would be some specimens remaining. And they found their way, a few into collections, and they were in the Paymaster collection, and there was maybe 5 sets. But 4 of them are all in one of these small pages. So there's a few, and will there be many more? Who knows? These 2 photos, they're wonderful, spectacular photos. These are Canadian troops in Korea during the Korean War, and this is series 481 MPC. So this is, we always said that was restricted to U.S. military personnel. Well, it was not restricted to U.S. military personnel. It was restricted to authorized Allied personnel. So this is pretty amazing shots here. I think I mentioned to you earlier that I collect the photos as well as MPC. So, oh yeah, it does go on. Wow. So let's see if. Okay, so Allied use of MPC, in addition to during the Korean War in Vietnam. There were, of course, Allied countries in Vietnam, and Lyndon Johnson was very interested in expanding the number of troops or the number of countries represented in Vietnam. So here we have a propaganda leaflet, include the flags of the major countries involved on the U.S. side in Vietnam. So here we have this is the Republic of Vietnam, South Vietnam flag, and the South Korean flag in front of the South Korean force headquarters in Vietnam. So Australia, New Zealand, and then the Philippines and other smaller countries that participated just used MPC, which, by the way, the U.S. government gave to these countries for free. They could pay their soldiers in it, and they could go to the PX and so forth. And so it was free to the Allied country. Eventually, it was decided from observation that the Koreans and the Thais were excessively involved in the black market activities. And so they came up with a plan where the Koreans and Thais would, in addition to MPC to spend in the PXs and other places, they'd have to have a corresponding coupon. So the Thais and the Koreans were paid in MPC and a coupon. So to spend it, they had to have the coupon and MPC. So here there are 4 series of Korean coupons and 3 series of Thai coupons. Overall, they're quite scarce. Some of them not known in any collection. Right here is the first series through the $1. I don't have any images of the $5, $10, or $20 coupons from the first series Korean. These coupons, all of them were printed at the Navy printing facility on Guam, which is now gone. So the second series Korean coupons. So I'm showing you here this nice irony. Here we have a Chinese cash coin on the coupon, and it says, if you can make it out here, 702, which what exactly the 702 meant, we don't know, but I'm assuming it was kind of a series. And real little funny aside, this item here has been misidentified many times in descriptions. And this is a Korean drum, a sort of a folk drum, popularly known in Korea. So the second series, and I'm kind of moving fast. Actually, how did we? Oh, never mind. Sorry, thinking about other things. Third series, Korean, and quite nice design. And now here's showing you. So here's this. This is an ancient astronomy device. Built this to get closer to the heavens for studying the stars. And this $20 down here, terrible black and white image. I'm sorry. I don't know where I got the image. If I owned that note, if I had that note, ever saw that note, maybe I borrowed it. But I've got this black and white image from old times, but I don't know if I can't find a color image of that note. So if any of you own that note, let me know. Or if you have that $20, I really need an image of that. And the Korean fourth series with Korean persons on them. I think they're all military, maybe not all naval. I thought they were all naval, but I'm not sure. I thought for a long time I thought they were all Admiral Lee or Yi. I'm not sure, but it turns out if you look carefully, they're different, and lots of research remains and can be done on this series to identify those. And the back images, in Korean, there's actually a description of what these various things are, but we haven't gotten translations of them yet. Could use help on that too. The first series, Thai, very rare. And particular interest. So look at the second series, Thai, where you see I don't have an image of a 10. So here was the first series Thai that we looked at, and here's the second series Thai. They bungled the description in the pit catalogs for years and years, so they often get just described as with wreaths and words to that effect. So in fact, the first example I got of the first series was because I cherry picked it from somebody who had it and didn't know what he had, and he thought he had a second series from the description, but it was the first series. Since then, that complete set was found. Third series Thai. The third series Thai introduced a new twist and has a serial number. Where's my pointer? So there's a serial number on the high values of the third series coupon, third series Thai, but there was no $20 on the third series Thai. We'll jump around and just look at a few miscellaneous things now. So here's some cool serial numbers: 1, 2, and 18. These two are the lowest two numbers known. There's a 3 out there in a collection that I'm still trying to get a hold of. For 40 years I've been trying to get it. So I'd love to get, or at least I got to get an image of that 3. Here's some more really special numbers. A ladder and a solid. This is the only known solid. This might be the only. I don't know if there's a 1 through 7. There may be a 0 through 7, and I'm not sure. So here's some really interesting notes. So here's pairs. Notice here, 2 like serial numbers on the same series, but different notes. So it's just absolute random occurrence, except the interesting thing about this one is you can see this is greater than 672,000. This is greater than 400,000. These are both from the second unit, and there was only one printing of regular issues for series 661. So it's one of a couple cases where we had 2 printings of replacements for 1 regular issue printing. So that's an interesting pair. But look at this interesting pair. Now here we have the same note, 541.5, and the same serial number on a regular issue here, and the replacement. Now, among collectors who don't know what they're talking about, and a prominent collector, a prominent dealer sold a pair like this in the 70s, talking about a note, a replacement, and the note that it replaced. But we all know that's not the case. That's not the case because there's independent numbering systems. So it's, on one hand, it's random, but not a hard feat to match up a pair like this. But it's possible. Any replacement you find, any serial number of replacement, there was a corresponding regular issue. Trouble is just finding it. Some more interesting numbers. These are all binary numbers that have been interested in the MPC Gram recently. So here's match serial numbers at 1,000. And then all of these have just ones and zeros. Very interesting notes to look at. Errors. There are sort of a normal assortment of errors, probably fewer than the Federal Reserve notes, in that conversion day took care of a lot of errors. So here's a spectacular note with serial numbers running off the note, and this one in the wrong place. The only error like that that's ever been seen. One of the most famous errors. This looks like, see this halo here and the off here compared to how it's supposed to be. This note was very famous. It was known for many years before any image of it was available. And the back of this is inverted. It's offset a little bit too, but it's inverted. And so it was known for its invert. But until it came out of that collection and was sold at public auction, it wasn't known that it also had the effects that you could see on the face. So this is we think, or I think anyway, the invert happened when I don't want to go into it right now. I'm a little flustered. So anyway, you can find that from the halo effect on the face. And the most famous error of all. So we have a correct note here in the bottom. And look at the error. So see this, the print right here, it doesn't appear up there. And over here, it doesn't appear up there. And then because, see this MPC in the background there, it also doesn't appear there. So that's a missing printing. And the amazing thing about this error is that was discovered by finance officers in Vietnam. And they sent out a teletype to all the finance offices, warning them of this error and to watch out for it and telling them the numbers and so forth. And several of these notes from that one sheet, and maybe the second sheet behind it, I don't remember for sure, but several notes from that same sheet have been found. So as you know, there'd be 50 on a sheet, and if there's an error like this on one of them, it's on all 50. And could be on the next sheet too, but several from the same sheet have been found. Pretty amazing error. A couple more errors, pretty all amazing in their own right. Of course, here you have the famous Series 541. We know that they had every kind of problems with Series 541. So this is a Series 54110 without any serial numbers at all. Notice the big tear in it, but it's still a wonderful note without the serial numbers. And then two offsets, particular to notice, this is another 541. So here's a Series 541, as you'd expect, and with an error. So not surprised to have so many 541s with errors. And a 521 with a similar error. And then look at this one. It just looks like a scrap of paper, but that's the blank face of a scrap of a paper from a Tudor press, where Ray Toy went scrounging around in the 1960s. He went through the abandoned factory. It was dangerous, but he went around there pulling up floorboards and whatnot, looking for remnants of MPC printing. And he found this remnant under a floorboard. I don't know for sure under a floorboard, but in some scrap laying around. And this is believed to have been the serial number that it should have been when it was discovered and taken out. And a final bit of eye candy here. This is the Series 661 progressive with a specimen. And I mentioned that this is the one that's known as the Janet Jackson note because of the wardrobe malfunction, which you can probably see down here. And so that's fairly famous among collectors. There were MPC checks, any area that, back up. Starting in 1946, at Eisenhower's request, military banks were set up with military facilities in overseas areas. And contracts were let where these banks could be operated by U.S. banks at a guaranteed profit basis. And in areas where MPC was in use, that checks were payable only in military payment certificates. So here you have 2 military payment certificate checks. So both of these were used in Japan, but there were many, many, many used in Germany and other places too. And here you have what's called a military banking facility check. So after, if MPC was not in use, usually it was when it was withdrawn and they were no longer using it, the bank continued, but the checks were now available in dollars. They didn't have to be in military payment certificates. So you have military banking facility checks and military payment certificate checks. And both of these they're not widely sought after. I think they're greatly underappreciated in an area for a great collector fund somebody can jump in. And they're not expensive. In fact, they've gone down a lot in price. They had a run about 10 years ago, and we're up to like $15 a piece. Now, very often you can get them at $5 or $7 a piece, and they're really cool. I enjoy collecting them. Training MPC, Joe Bowling himself was responsible for salvaging a lot of the training MPC that we know of. That when what the word I used earlier was liberate. He liberated a bunch of training MPC in the 70s from the Finance Corps at Fort Benjamin Harrison. And you'll remember that maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't. At the very first slide, I said 1946 to 1973-ish, because MPC was no longer issued after 1973, but lots of things have gone on. The military banking facility checks are still out there. New discoveries to be made. And of course, military fest certificates are issued at MPC Fest and at Summer Seminar. So they're a takeoff on military payment certificates, something that the community issues itself. See, this one is for A&A Summer Seminar in 2001, military fest certificate. They're keenly collected by some fest participants, and they can be collected at modest prices today. So the MPC Gram is our electronic newsletter. If you're not aware of it, it's a newsletter for MPC enthusiasts, MPC and related kind of issues. It's a free thing. You can send me an email or call me if you have to, and we can get you signed up for MPC Gram. 1 year free, 5 years free. And after all the trials and tribulations, we seem to have made it through. What are your questions, please?
Awesome. All right. So you have had some come through, so I'll start reading from the beginning. So for those, yes, I am recording this presentation. We'll cut out the little mishap in between, and we will put this on the website, so you will have that information. Okay, so this came in about an hour after you started your presentation. It says, where is the serial number of the 50-cent year following 591?
We could go back there. I don't remember what we'd be talking about. Let's see here. Let's try. Let's see. So he said after 591 or before, what was it again?
Said following 591.
Okay, so here's series 611. That's following 591. I'm not sure what you're talking about. So here's the serial numbers. There are some specimen serial numbers here. Now, if you could be talking about this one, this is the back of the 50 cent. This is the back of this 10, the back of this 5, and the back of this 5 cent. So I'm not sure what the issue was, but maybe this clarifies it. It's hard to see the serial number in this one. It actually gets sort of hidden away in the design. That's the best I can do.
Okay. Let's see here. Some other ones came through from the beginning. This one says series 100 is in yen and sen, All others are in dollars and cents. How did that work?
Well, before the introduction of MPC through World War II, the plan and the action, the policy was to pay soldiers in local money. So soldiers in Germany before MPC were paid in German marks. So if you were in Japan, you were paid in Japanese yen. But then they introduced the MPC, the trial MPC, and actually I don't know if it was considered a one-to-one exchange rate, but they would just issued they got the next time they got paid after the conversion. The next time they got paid, they had been getting paid in yen anyway, so they got paid in the A yen instead of the B yen. It seems a little cumbersome and almost surprising that they could have tolerated the small difference, but it worked well. I don't know what else to say.
How expensive are MPCs to collect? I am in college and my budget is small when it comes to collecting.
Thank you. Well, the answer is a college student with a small budget, which I would expect, would be to start with study. So you can borrow or obtain a book and learn. And unlike many areas, there's actually ways you can cherry pick things like replacements and even make some money to fund some of your collection. And people have done that. But you can build, a lot of the notes are really cheap. You could build a nice representative collection in very fine for other than the top keys for a small amount of money. Like right here, Series 611, not a real common series to find, but these fractionals, a very fine might be, I don't know, I'll just guess $15. And many of them, much less than that. You get to the Vietnam era, you get to a very fine, you're probably going to get down to much less than $5. And of course, things that have changed since I started collecting, you have eBay, and you can hunt on eBay and for good deals and groups and so forth. And in fact, you probably wouldn't want me to tell you, but remember the 692 20s with that error, their Oklahoma Danny was bound and determined to find one of those, and he knew about them from studying the book, and he studied that, and he found two of those, and he got he got I think $1,700 for the one that he sold, and he kept the other one, and he using that money to finance his collection. So I'd recommend start by studying, and then start with go with a few, just build up. You can take two approaches. You could buy an uncirculated $692 or nickel for, I don't know, $20, $25, or a fine for $2, and decide whether you want to have quite a few circulated pieces or just a couple hunks. It's just how you want to approach it. But start by studying and get familiar with the community. Subscribe to and read the MPC Gram, and there are things for sale in there sometimes too. And people are like to help out starting collectors, so you might even get some special deals. Especially write in and say that that's what you are, and you want to hear about anybody's got something for sale. You might get some really special offers.
What's the latest edition of your MPC book?
Oh, thank you everyone for asking. So the current edition is the 4th edition, and it's very important. The distinction between the 3rd and the 4th is very, very important, because the 3rd edition did not have the information on the multiple printings. So you need to have the best information on multiple printings, and that's in the 4th edition. It's just barely still available. It's officially sold out, but you can find a copy around. It's available for loan from the A&A library whenever they start opening the doors and can lend them to you. So you can watch out for that. I can almost ready to hear the hoots come over the internet, that I've promised it before, but the 5th edition should be out at next year at MPC Fest in 2021. It's far advanced. I work on it every day. So the 5th edition with much new stuff in it, what should be then, but not as much new stuff as there was in the 4th edition. The 4th edition is really important with the information on the multiple printings.
Where can we get detailed information on what was in the Paymaster collection?
Very good question. I thought about providing that. So this is the auction catalog that from the Paymaster collection. I was going to recommend to everybody, if you don't have one, look around, watch around, try to find one. It's a historic sale, and I think a good thing to have one of these catalogs. I have a few extras that I went through a big hassle to get transported back and whatnot, and I will offer a few of those in the MPC Graham in the next few months. But I highly recommend everybody to get one of those catalogs, or if you have one, to make sure that you keep it. It's an important catalog. Thank you for the question.
Awesome. Are there any complete uncut sheets of MPC?
The short answer is there are none in private hands. I've seen one at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. You'll love it. It's Series 681, $20 replacement. And I know the serial number of it, but I can't remember it. So until the Paymaster collection, there were no even. That's not quite true. I'll take that back. The only multiples, that is partial sheets, are the 4-ups, of which there was several. There were several in the Paymaster collection, and then there were 2 others, Series 692 and 681. 4-up composite books are in private hands, and but those are even the only partial sheets.
What is the value difference from a reprint compared to original print?
Probably you mean second printing or subsequent printing. There's no. This is not a print and a reprint. This is a first printing and a second printing or subsequent printing, and you can't generalize. One theory would say you'd expect the late printings to be more common than the early printings because those were the ones that were last in circulation when they were converted, so those would be more likely to be saved. That's that theory. The other theory is that the last series or the last printing would be less common in collections because not as many of them would have been issued, and they'd be a smaller part of the total outstanding. So it just depends on the actual issue, and it varies. Certainly, all 4th printing 481s are rare. So all 4th printing 481s are better than all the other printings. All 3rd printing 481s are better than the 1st or 2nd printings. But between 1st and 2nd printing 481s, I don't think we know for sure what the long-term answer to that is going to be. For replacements for between printings, we have a lot better idea of how many are extant because we've done a survey of replacements since the 1970s that has about 3,000 serial numbers. Thank you.
A couple of people have asked for you to email them. Would you be willing to share your email? If not, I can share my work email and then forward them to you.
I gave it there on the next to the last slide. Hang on, I'll put it up there so everybody can see it. I'm glad to have it, and my phone number's there too. Whoops. So maybe there we go. So there's my email at the bottom. I'm glad to receive email anytime. I'm glad to receive phone calls, but not anytime. I'm not a morning person, so in the afternoons Eastern time, I'm up late, but I'm really not ready to receive calls late. I'll make calls late if I know you're up. Anytime, give me an email.
What's the address and phone number of the MPC Gram again, please? I don't know if it's on this page or not.
Just send it to me.
Send it to you. Okay, perfect. Let's see here. Other than MPC Fest and the summer seminar, are there other gatherings of MPC collectors?
Oh, very good question. Very good question. Those are the two biggest events. Around the country every year, there's several what we call mini fests. And these are, they're from ad hoc to fairly well planned. Usually at the major conventions, certainly at the ANA convention, at the ANA, it's on Saturday right after the IBNS meeting, Saturday morning. It's at Fun and many other big events. And usually there's a souvenir note of some kind issued. Usually it's an obsolete military fest certificate that has been overprinted or otherwise modified for the special event, the mini fest.
So for those that may have missed it, I'm recording this presentation and I'm going to put it on the ANA website. So watch for this presentation the next few days to the next week. ANA is money.org. So just go to that website and you can find it there. Let's see here.
Brianna?
Yes.
If you'll make sure you send me a notice or call when you do that, and we'll make sure we announce in the MPC Gram that it's available.
Okay, perfect. I will forward it to you when we have it.
And actually, I thought of another little advertisement that I could make. The MPC community, mostly from the results of the MPC Fest, awards scholarships to the summer seminar to take the World War II class that Joe Bolin and I teach together, and also to the MPC Boot Camp, and also of particular interest to this community. There is Joe Bolin's class on detecting world counterfeit notes.
All right, last two questions for today. What's the difference between a replacement note and original note?
Well, the difference in how you recognize them is the replacement has only one letter on the serial number. A regular issue has a prefix and a suffix. The replacement has only a prefix, no suffix. That's how you recognize by looking at them. What the difference in their function was, actually, when a replacement got inserted into the regular issue stream, it becomes a regular issue in terms of commerce. But its function was to replace a spoiled note. I don't know if that answers it or not.
And then, what's the story with a large quantity of high quality 461 $10 bills? $10 notes, excuse me.
Well, I don't know. 461 has always been pretty common. It had the first year syndrome, people saving things, and there were bundles, presumably what I used earlier, liberated after conversion, that they were worthless, and so after conversion, some of them got liberated. Yeah, I don't know anything better than that.
All right. Perfect. Well, I know some people have said that there's an issue with the survey. I think we're having issues with Zoom as well today. So if you got in and were able to participate in the survey, we appreciate it. If not, I do understand, so there's no worry there. So I just want to thank you, Fred, for your time today. With all of the little issues that we ran into, we do appreciate your time. For those that have questions, please feel free to reach out to Fred with other questions that you have. And I hope everybody enjoyed this presentation. And have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.